Who of you can identify with the following situation? You set a new goal for yourself, and in the beginning you're self-disciplined, and you work really hard to reach that goal. But after a while, you do less and less of it, and maybe in the end, you stop pursuing it altogether. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Please raise your hand. Okay. Well, I'm a social psychologist, and I study self-control. When I talk about self-control, I mean overcoming our short-term impulses in order to reach our long-term goals. Successful self-control requires that we prioritize working over taking a break, running that extra mile on the treadmill over pushing a stop button, studying over having fun with friends, and so on. When we don't manage to exert self-control, not to offend anyone who just raised their hand, we call this in psychology self-control failure. And normally when I tell people what I research, they ask me, so how do I get better at this? And I will elaborate on some strategies based on the latest scientific findings. But I won't talk about any of this today, because the truth is, it never gets easy. As much as I have been looking for the holy grail of self-control, I still suck at it. And the realization that self-control, the engagement in labor, the exertion of effort never gets easy kept me wondering, why are we designed in a way that self-control is hard and vanishes over time? Self-control leads to so many positive outcomes: careers, good grades, health, even money. My life would be so much easier if putting in the effort to reach my goals was easy, if nothing could bring me greater joy than pursuing my goals. Why are we designed in a way that self-control is effortful? In order to find out, I conducted a little study. Of course, you can't ask participants, why are you designed in a way that self-control is effortful? So instead I asked them, what are some of the things that prevent you from pursuing a goal? What are some of the things that make you quit a task that you're working on? And an interesting common theme that people mentioned over and over again was the extent to which they had other, more preferred things to do. That means it's not simply the case that we dislike doing the things that are effortful, that we're not able to persist in our goals, or that we're just lazy. Trust me, if your life would depend on it, you would manage to go to the gym every day. What these results showed is a phenomenon that's actually backed up by economic theory called opportunity costs. It's the cost you have when you decide to do one thing and therefore must forgo doing something else. For example, when we spend money on one thing, we cannot spend it elsewhere, and when we work, we cannot play. Opportunity costs can have serious consequences, and only recently have psychologists, and myself included, applied the concept of opportunity costs to psychology. It's the cost of missing out on another preferred activity that makes self-control so hard for us. To give you an example, when I was a child, I was taking these piano lessons, but I never wanted to practice. So I was basically the nightmare of every tiger mom. But it wasn't simply the case that I didn't enjoy practicing the piano. Rather, my opportunity cost got in the way, not being able to play with the other children. And practicing in light of these opportunity costs made practicing the piano more effortful. A year ago, I conducted a study with 400 students from different fields and employees from various professions. It was a study on work-life balance, and they received a survey 7 times a day over the course of an entire week. And I asked them 3 things. Whether, how happy they were at any given moment, whether they were engaging in work or leisure, and whether they were experiencing opportunity costs. What I expected to find was what we call a curvilinear relationship. People would be unhappy when they worked too much, but they should also be unhappy with too little work. But there would be the sweet spot in the middle, the moderate amount of work where people would be the happiest. But this wasn't at all what I found. What I actually found was a strong negative relationship between happiness and work. People were the happiest with a low amount of work, and the more they worked, the happier they became. Interestingly, one influencing factor was the perception of opportunity costs. When at work, participants indicated they'd rather spend the time doing something else, such as spending it with people that matter to them. Engaging in laborious activities that they ought to do, they had to forgo the opportunity to engage in leisurely activities that they want to do. And when we looked at the breakdown of their exact opportunity costs, they were hardly ever about work. Most of the times, they were about leisure-related activities, such as hobbies, time for the self, and time for other people. And this resonates pretty well with research that has looked at regrets of the dying. So among the many things that people regret the most when they die is the extent to which they traded the opportunity to socially connect for work. I wish I'd worked less. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. I wish I'd spent more time with my family. These regrets on deathbeds all crave for human connection, and what the longest study on happiness, going for over 75 years now, shows is that the most satisfied people and the most happy people are the ones in stable relationships. And when we look around, it's social media that has revolutionized the internet and the way we communicate, which is basically just a modern expression of our innate desire to be connected to other people. But relationships take time, something we believe we may not always have in our busy lives. As a society, we value work over play, productivity over laziness, self-discipline over slacking. We say children should be allowed to play, but we forget this when we're adults. So as a consequence, on an average workday, we spend 8.9 hours doing something work-related and only 2.5 hours doing something leisure-related, which means only 2.5 hours for hobbies, for ourselves, and for other people. That's the Japanese word karoshi. It means death from being overworked, and it's a serious issue in Japan. In my work, I've also looked at workaholism and opportunity costs. A workaholic is a person who works compulsively. It's not a healthy condition, as you may imagine, and may lead to karoshi or other negative health-related consequences. We may not always die. And what I found was that people who scored high on workaholism were more likely to experience opportunity costs in the opposite direction, feeling like they were missing out on work when they were taking a break. A woman once said, "It feels undisciplined. It feels wasteful. I don't know if I will do such thing ever again." What awful thing you believe this woman did. Well, she watched a movie on Netflix for the first time and felt guilty about it. Isn't it a weird moral system in which one may feel guilty about being unproductive? And as a society, we have an all too moralistic view of productivity thanks to what is called capitalism and the Protestant work ethic, which is the idea that God praises the ones only who produce and devote their lives to labor. As Max Weber wrote, loss of time through sociability, idle talk, luxury, even more sleep than necessary, 6 to at most 8 hours is worthy of absolute moral condemnation. Hard work, performance, and diligence, once signs of grace and salvation, have turned into aspired values in themselves so that we spend our lives contributing to the GDP instead of enjoying it, and accept time poverty as a necessary condition for employment. So in the beginning, I asked the question, why are we designed in a way that self-control is effortful? I believe there's a reason. It's for our own good to experience opportunity costs because they serve as a signal that tells us to switch from labor to leisure, from work to life. And I believe we can be just as productive when we take a break, when we build relationships, when we're socially active online or in real life, because this is what may benefit us in the long run. If you're an employer, you may wonder, okay, what can you possibly do to increase your employees' happiness? And I think there are 3 things you can possibly do to minimize your employees' opportunity costs. The first recommendation is to have a lot of paid holidays. 30 at a minimum. I think we're not doing bad in Germany, where the average person has 29, but with 20 being the minimum, I think we could do better. And there's some countries where 10 is the minimum, which I think is too little. And my second recommendation would be on-site opportunities to play games or sports or other form of hobbies so that your employees can take a leisurely break whenever necessary. And my third recommendation is make no emails on evenings or on weekends a rule, because this is time to unwind and to relax. And I think these recommendations are important because nothing, neither work nor play, is more valuable than the other. In order to flourish in life, we need both. We need careers and accomplishment on the one side, but also play and relationships on the other side. So for all these years, I've been searching the holy grail of self-control, but the realization of opportunity costs has shifted my perspective, and I hope today it has also shifted yours. Opportunity is a currency, and we should spend it well. So I want to leave you with 3 takeaways. Focus on relationships, rethink the value that you place on work, and self-control failure is not always a failure. It helps us to prevent karoshi and lets us take part in this adventure called life. Thank you.